crystalline spires of Lexicon Prime glittered under the light of 3 suns, their fractal patterns reflecting across the domed city below. Inside the Galactic Linguistic Council's central archive, delegates from 100 species floated, slithered, or clicked their way through holographic records taller than redwoods. The air hummed with the chatter of 1,000 languages, each word passed, catalogued, and for the right price, licensed. Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted the hood of her envirocloak, her human silhouette stark against the bioluminescent swirls of the Vexari delegates. Their chitinous limbs tapped at floating screens, their faceted eyes reflecting streams of data. She kept her head down, her neural transmitter hidden beneath her sleeve, its illegal firmware itching to connect to the Council's mainframe. Next petition droned the arbitration core, a sphere of pulsating light suspended above the chamber. A Vexari with gold, tipped mandibles stepped forward, its voice a synthetic purr. The Vexari Dominion files universal trademark claim Fei Alpha. The holograms flickered, rearranging into lines of glowing text. All human language, past and present, is hereby declared intellectual property of the Vexari trade conglomerate. The chamber erupted. A tentacled Quellian delegate sprayed ink in protest. Preposterous. You can't own communication. The Vexari's mandibles twitched. Correction, we already do. Galactic law Fei permits trademark of any structured symbolic system. It gestured, and the holograms displayed Earth's languages, English, Mandarin, Swahili, each tagged with a flashing Vexari seal. Effective immediately. Unauthorized use will incur penalties. Elena's fingers curled into fists. Shed warned Earth's government this was coming. The Vexari had already trademarked music, mathematics, even the concept of barter in 3 systems. But language, she activated her transmitter, sending a pulse through the Council's firewalls. The arbitration core flickered. Objection, said a rasping voice. A skeletal Glythian ambassador unfolded itself from the shadows. Human language is inefficient. Why claim it? The Vexari's carapace shimmered with amusement. Market analysis shows a Fey increase in human trade influence. Their idioms have contaminated 700 dialects. It tapped a screen, and a list scrolled. Break the ice, bite the bullet. Go viral, all stamped with the Vexari sigil. Royalties will be collected per utterance. Elena's transmitter beeped softly in her palm. A single word flashed on its tiny display. Echo. She exhaled. Time to move. As she slipped toward the exit, a Vexari enforcer blocked her path, its ocular implants scanning her cloak. Human detected. State your business. Elena forced a smile, just observing were. Honored by your interest in our culture. The enforcer's mandibles parted in what might have been a sneer. Your culture is now a subsidiary. Compliance ensures continued access to basic communication. It leaned closer, the scent of ozone wafting from its vents. Do you understand? Elena met its gaze, crystal clear. Outside, the triple sunlight burned her eyes. The transmitter vibrated again. Earth's last free linguists were waiting. She glanced back at the spire, where the arbitration core's verdict glowed crimson across the sky. Claim approved. Somewhere over Earth, the first Vexari trademark drones would already be descending. Elena ran. The sky cracked open with silver light. Captain Ryan Blake stood on the bridge of the USN Defiance, his knuckles white against the armrest. The orbital monitors showed them coming. Dozens of sleek, needle-shaped ships descending through Earth's atmosphere like falling quills. The Vexari lexicon enforcers. Report, Blake snapped. Lieutenant Chen's fingers flew over her console. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, sir. Every language, even dead ones. A voice boomed across the planet. Smooth and synthetic, dripping with legal precision. Attention, inhabitants of Terra. By decree of the Galactic Linguistic Council, all human language is now the intellectual property of the Vexari Dominion. Unauthorized use constitutes infringement. Penalty, neural reset, comply or be silenced. Blake's jaw tightened. They're jamming our comms. Across the bridge, Ensign Rivera swore as his screen flickered. They just trademarked swearing, sir. I'm getting a cease and desist notice for unauthorized expletive usage. The main display lit up with red markers as the Vexari ships took position over every major city: Tokyo, New York, Nairobi. Their hulls gleamed with glowing glyphs, legal notices scrolling in real time. Open a channel, Blake ordered. Which one? Chen asked bitterly. They own them all now. Down on Earth, the streets were chaos. In London, a street vendor stared as his holographic menu dissolved mid-transaction, replaced by a pulsing Vexari trademark symbol. A poet in Buenos Aires screamed when her neural implant forcibly redacted her own thoughts, replacing them with sterile, pre-approved phrases. In a Tokyo back alley, Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed against a graffiti-strewn wall, her neural transmitter hidden under her sleeve. The Vexari patrol drones floated past, scanning for unlicensed communication. She held her breath until they turned the corner. Elena, a whisper came from a rusted service hatch. A teenager with cybernetic eyes gestured frantically. They're bricking all the translators. Get underground now. Above them, a Vexari herald ship hovered, its underbelly pulsing with crimson light. A new broadcast echoed. Reminder, even non-verbal communication, gestures, facial expressions, are pending litigation. Smile permits available for purchase. Back on the Defiance, Blake watched as Earth's global networks collapsed. One by one, the comm stations winked out. They're locking down the planet, Rivera muttered, turning us into a goddamn silent movie. A proximity alert blared. Captain, Chen shouted. One of their ships just changed course, heading for us. The Vexari vessel approached, its hull shimmering with legal text. A direct transmission popped up on screen, a faceless, smooth-voiced envoy. Yezen Defiance, you are hereby served for unlicensed use of military terminology. Your designation warship infringes on registered Vexari terminology. Power down immediately or face litigation. Blake leaned forward. Tell them this. Article Fay of the Old Earth Legal Code. The right to tell an empire to go fuck itself. Chen blinked, sir. They'll fine us into oblivion. Let them try. Blake tapped his console. Gunnery, target their trademark array. I want a counter-argument ready in 5 seconds. The Defiance's railguns hummed to life. On the surface, Elena ducked into the neon-lit bunker beneath Shibuya Station. The air smelled of solder and ink. Hackers crouched over jury-rigged servers while poets scribbled on paper, actual paper, like relics from a dead age. A man with a scarred cheek thrust a note into her hands. They can't trademark what they can't see, it read. Elena smiled. She pulled out her neural transmitter and set it on the table. The tiny device glowed faintly. Then let's give them something new to look at. Above them all, the Vexari ships pulsed with self-satisfied legality. Unaware of the quiet storm brewing beneath their feet, the neon glow of Tokyo's underground flickered across Dr. Elena Vasquez's face as she crouched over a makeshift workstation. The bunker hummed with the quiet desperation of a dozen resistance fighters, hackers with neural jacks, poets scribbling on paper, engineers cobbling together analog transmitters. The air smelled of solder and sweat. A young woman with cybernetic eyes slid a sheet of paper toward her. They're scanning for digital comms, she signed. But they can't track this. Elena ran her fingers over the handwritten words. A poem, of all things. The stars are not yours to claim, she exhaled sharply. They trademarked our alphabet, but forgot about ink. Across the room, Captain Ryan Blake leaned against a rusted support beam, his uniform jacket traded for a faded sweatshirt. We've got 6 hours before the next enforcement sweep, he muttered. If they catch us using unauthorized language, neural reset. Finished a hacker named Jiro, tapping his temple. Wipe your brain clean of grammar permanently. Elena's fingers twitched toward the neural transmitter embedded in her wrist, a prototype smuggled out of her lab before the Vexari raided it. Project Echo is ready, she said, but we need a carrier signal, something they can't trademark. A poet with ink-stained fingers laughed bitterly. Good luck. They own every word from hello to goodbye. Not all of them, Jiro said suddenly. He yanked open a rusted maintenance panel, revealing a tangle of pre-war fiber optics. The old subway lines used Morse code for repairs. Its physical pulses through cables. No words, just rhythm. Blake's eyes narrowed. You're saying we can tap our way to freedom? A tremor shook the bunker. Dust rained from the ceiling as a Vexari enforcement drone passed overhead, its scanners painting the streets in cold blue light. They're early, Jiro hissed. Elena didn't flinch. Her fingers danced across the transmitter, compiling fragments of dead languages, nursery rhymes, even DNA sequences, anything the Vexari hadn't thought to copyright. They wanted to own our voice, she muttered. Fine, let's give them all of them. The drone's spotlight froze on the bunker's hidden entrance. A synthesized voice boomed through the walls. Cease unauthorized communication, penalty, neural reset. Blake grabbed a crowbar. Time to go loud. Wait, Elena ordered. She pressed a final key and the transmitter pulsed. A shockwave of silence rippled outward, cancelling the drone's audio sensors. For 3 heartbeats, Tokyo went utterly quiet. Then every screen in the bunker lit up with the same message, scrolling in 1,000 forgotten scripts. Error. Trademark invalid. Jiro whooped, slamming his fist on the table. You broke their system. No, Elena corrected, watching as the drone outside stuttered and crashed. We just reminded them. Humanity's words predate their laws. Above them, the first unlicensed whispers began to spread, in Morse code through the subway tunnels, in sign language behind closed doors, in the rustling of paper passed hand to hand. The Vexari had silenced a planet. They hadn't realized silence could speak. The USN Defiance hung in the silent void between Mars and Jupiter, her hull blackened to avoid detection. Captain Ryan Blake watched the tactical display, his jaw tight. The Vexari trademark satellite floated in high Earth orbit, its silver surface pulsing with legal decrees in 100 languages. Status, Blake said. Lieutenant Chen tapped her console. Satellites broadcasting cease and desist orders on loop. It is jamming all unauthorized comms within 1 million clicks. Blake cracked his knuckles. Unauthorized like breathing. On the screen, the Vexari vessel shimmered, a sleek, arrogant needle of polished metal. Its surface was etched with glowing glyphs, each one a registered trademark for words like "the" and. Railguns charged, Captain, said Weapons Officer Kovic. His fingers hovered over the firing controls. But if we hit it, they'll sue us into oblivion, Blake smirked. Not if we don't use their words. He tapped his comm. Dr. Vasquez, you ready? The linguist's voice crackled through the bridge speakers. The glyphs are loaded. Ancient Sumerian, Proto-Indo, European, Old Chinese. None of them are in the Vexari database. Good, because we're about to send them a message. The Defiance's engines flared. The ship lunged forward, her railguns humming as they charged. The Vexari satellite didn't react. Why would it? No species had ever dared attack a registered intellectual property enforcer. Fire! Tungsten slugs screamed through the void. They struck the satellite's hull, not with explosions, but with precision. Metal groaned as the projectiles carved deep, jagged lines into the silver surface. Chen squinted at the feed. Sir, are those letters? Blake leaned back. Yep, the railgun's strikes had etched a single, untranslatable word across the satellite's side. No. The Vexari ship shuddered. Its legal AI scrambled to pass the glyph, searching their databases for a matching trademark. Nothing. The word didn't exist in their registry. A frantic transmission burst from the satellite. Unauthorized linguistic modification detected. Cease all unlicensed communication immediately. Blake opened a channel. His voice boomed across the void. Try to copyright this. The Vexari response was instant and panicked. Ambiguous syntax detected, legal parameters undefined. This constitutes a violation of the satellite systems overloaded. Its lights flickered, then died. The glyph on its hull glowed faintly in the starlight. On Earth, 1 billion screens flickered back to life. The jamming signal was gone. Chen grinned. Did we just out-lawyer them? Blake exhaled. Nah, we just reminded them that some words can't be owned. Deep in the Tokyo bunker, Dr. Vasquez watched the feed. Her fingers flew across a keyboard, routing the satellite's death throes into Project Echo. The Vexari had made one fatal mistake. They'd assumed language was about control. But humans, they'd always known it was about war. A new message scrolled across every freed screen on Earth. Just 2 words, ripped from the oldest human text Vasquez could find. I am. The Vexari overseers on Lexicon Prime recoiled as their legal feeds lit up with error messages. Their AI stuttered, trying to process the phrase. This is a declaration, one hissed. Not a trademarkable construct. It defies categorization. On the bridge of the Defiance, Blake watched as the first Vexari enforcement ships broke orbit, scrambling to retreat. Captain, Kavik said. They're running. Blake nodded. Good. Let them tell the others what happens when you try to own a human's voice. The Defiance turned her guns toward the next target somewhere. In the dark, a poet was already writing the next word of rebellion. The Vexari overseer's holographic projection flickered above Tokyo's silent skyline, its segmented carapace twitching with irritation. Comply with Directive Phi. It buzzed, mandibles clicking in perfect galactic standard. All verbal communication constitutes trademark infringement. Below the streets were eerily still, no voices, no shouts. Just the wind between abandoned hovercars. Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted the neural transmitter behind her ear, its cracked screen glowing faintly in the bunker's dim light. The Tokyo resistance cell had gone completely analog. Whiteboards, covered in equations, paper maps pinned with red string, a single chalkboard where someone had scrawled, "They can't own what we don't give. They're monitoring every frequency," whispered Lieutenant Cho, his fingers flying over a jury-rigged Morse transmitter. Even lip reading satellites. Elena tapped the chalkboard. They trademarked language, not silence. Across the room, a hacker named Jiro froze mid-keystroke. Wait, you're saying we just stop talking? Not just us. Elena pulled up a global feed on the last functioning projector. Cities worldwide were going dark. London's billboards displayed blank slates. New York's ad drones hovered motionless. In Madrid, protesters held up empty signs. The overseer's hologram spasmed. This is non-compliance. You must speak to be governed. Captain Blake's voice crackled through the bunker's lone surviving radio, transmitted via old-school frequency hopping. Defiance to all cells. Execute Operation Mime. I repeat, shut the hell up. A Vexari legal drone descended over Times Square, its proboscis scanning for unauthorized words. It hovered, confused, before blaring. Violation detected. The following gestures constitute unlicensed communication. A nearby street performer had begun miming. On Lexicon Prime, the Galactic Linguistic Council's data spires trembled. The Vexari High Arbiter scrolled through millions of simultaneous infringement alerts, all flagged for silence. This is impossible, it hissed. Their legal code requires dispute. You cannot litigate nothing. Elena grinned, scribbling on the chalkboard. Exactly. The overseer's hologram flickered wildly. You think this changes anything? Our trademarks are... A deafening crunch echoed through the bunker as the Defiance's railguns punched through a Vexari trademark satellite. The impact left a glowing scar in the shape of a middle finger visible from orbit. Blake's voice came through again, this time on every surviving speaker on Earth. Try to copyright this. The Vexari legalized short-circuited precedent files overflowed. Entire case, law databases corrupted, trying to pass the phrase's ambiguity. In a hidden server farm beneath Zurich, a cluster of repurposed trademark bots began reciting the only untrademarkable words left in the galaxy. To be or not to be. Error, public domain, override. Elena pulled the neural transmitter from her ear and crushed it underfoot. The resistance didn't need machines anymore. The overseer's hologram pixelated, its voice breaking into static. You can't just... Elena picked up a piece of chalk slowly. Deliberately, she wrote a single word on the board. Watch us. The silence was absolute. For 3 days, 17 hours, and 22 minutes. Humanity had not spoken a single word. No broadcasts, no transmissions, not even whispers in the dark. The Vexari enforcement fleet hovered over Earth's silent cities, their legal eyes twitching in confusion. Without unauthorized speech to litigate, their entire framework crumbled. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat cross-legged in the Tokyo bunker, her fingers tracing the raised dots of a braille tablet. Around her, resistance hackers tapped Morse code into glowing terminals. The air hummed with tension. Activation threshold reached, a nearby screen flashed in text. Elena exhaled. It was time. She pressed her palm against the neural transmitter, the one shed smuggled out of Lexicon Prime. The device pulsed, syncing with the millions of others hidden across the planet. Project Echo wasn't just a countermeasure. It was a revolution. A low-frequency vibration rippled through the bunker. The hackers froze, one by one. Their eyes glazed over as the signal hit. Elena's vision whited out. When it cleared, she wasn't in Tokyo anymore. She stood in a vast, shifting space, a collective mindscape of every human still connected. Words floated around her, glowing like constellations. Shakespeare, Mandela, ancient cave paintings, the Declaration of Independence, all of it unbroken, untrademarked. They can't own what we are, a voice said. Elena turned. Captain Ryan Blake stood beside her, his uniform crisp despite the weeks of fighting. His grin was sharp. Ready to give them a vocabulary lesson? Above Earth, the Vexari overseer's ship shuddered. Alert. Its legal AI droned. Unauthorized linguistic activity detected. The overseer snarled, mandibles clicking. Impossible. They're silent. Then the first human voice cut through the void. It wasn't a transmission. It wasn't a signal. It was every human speaking at once, through thought, through memory, through the neural web Elena had unleashed. The words hit the Vexari fleet like a tidal wave. To be or not to be, the overseer's console exploded in warnings. Error. Error source, untraceable. We hold these truths to be self-evident. More alerts. The ship's systems flickered. The legal AI stuttered, caught between enforcing trademarks and processing the flood. Copyright violation. The overseer shrieked. Cease and desist. Blake's laughter echoed through the network. You wanted words, Heres, all of them. On Lexicon Prime, the databanks convulsed. Vexari scholars scrambled as their archives rewrote themselves. Ancient human texts, locked away as property, flashed public domain. The legal AIs short-circuited, their protocols collapsing under the weight of paradox. Does not compute, one stammered. Shakespearean works, now classified free speech. A junior clerk, a timid Glythian, watched in awe as the council's holograms fizzled out. "They're not hacking the system," they whispered. "They're becoming the system." Back on the Defiance, Blake leaned over the comms officer's shoulder. "Status. Vexari fleet is in full retreat, sir. Their AIs are quoting poetry at them." Blake smirked. "Good. Open a channel to Earth." The officer hesitated. "Sir, we're still under trademark lockdown." "Not anymore." The screen flickered to life. Elena's face appeared, her eyes alight with triumph. "Did we just win a war with a sonnet?" she asked. Blake crossed his arms. "Nah, we won it with a library. The Vexari homeworld never saw it coming. Their data spires, monuments to ownership, trembled as Project Echo reached critical mass. Every human mind, every archived word, every scrap of language they'd tried to claim surged back at them. The Overseer's final transmission was barely coherent. Error, language corrupted. Error, meaning undefined. Then silence. But this time, it wasn't humanity's. It was the sound of an empire choking on its own greed. Elena closed her eyes. Somewhere, in the heart of the neural web, the oldest human word stirred. Free. The Vexari homeworld burned without fire. Their towering data spires, monuments to a civilization built on ownership of meaning, flickered like dying stars. Across the galaxy, every registered trademark dissolved into static. The Vexari had built an empire on language, but humanity had given it back. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the ruins of the Tokyo bunker, her neural transmitter still humming. The air smelled of ozone and burnt circuitry. Around her, resistance fighters tapped Morse code messages against the walls, laughing as the clicks echoed through the silent city above. They didn't need words anymore. On the bridge of the USN Defiance, Captain Ryan Blake watched the tactical display. The Vexari enforcement fleet drifted aimlessly, their ship's systems locked in endless legal loops. "Status report," he said, though he already knew the answer. Lieutenant Chen grinned. "Their eyes are stuck in a recursive argument, sir. Something about fair use versus derivative works." Blake leaned forward. "Open a channel to Lexicon Prime." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the crumbling spires of the Vexari capital. A lone overseer, its chitinous plating cracked and leaking blue fluid, staggered into view. "This is unacceptable," it hissed. "You have violated Section Fei of the Galactic Copyright Accord." Blake interrupted. "Yeah, we read it, then we burned it." The Overseer's mandibles trembled. "Our legal frameworks are gone." Vasquez's voice cut in as her feed linked to the Defiance. "You forgot one thing. Language doesn't belong to anyone. It grows, it changes." She held up a tattered book, a first edition of Don Quixote. "You tried to own stories, but stories fight back." The Overseer's eyes dimmed across the planet. Data spires collapsed in cascading failures. The Vexari had built their empire on control. Now they drowned in the chaos of 1,000 human voices, unleashed on Earth. The silence ended. A child in Nairobi was the first to speak. "Mama." The word spread like wildfire. In New York, a street vendor shouted prices to the sky. In Shanghai, a poet recited verses to empty air, just to hear them exist. Blake turned to his crew. "Send a fleet. Wide broadcast. All frequencies. No encryption." Chen hesitated. "Sir, the Vexari might. Let them try." One word, repeated in every human language, dead and alive. A word the Vexari had never thought to trademark. The Vexari homeworld's last transmission crackled across the void. Not a declaration, not a legal injunction, just a broken, staticky whisper as their systems imploded. Error, language corrupted. Vasquez closed the book somewhere. A bird sang. She smiled and whispered the oldest human word into the wind. Free.